Welcome to Iron Age Marketing, your weekly dose of inspiration and wisdom, helping coaches, creatives, and business owners alike build authority and generate leads through podcasting. I'm Nicky P, and welcome. Welcome, everyone, yet again to another episode of Iron Age Marketing. I am Nicky P, here with my good friend and business associate, Luke Tatum. How are we doing today, Luke?
I'm doing great, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Well, I am glad to hear you were doing good because I am not. I'm in horrible pain. My throat's killing me. I'm trying to stuff lozenges in my face as much as I can between every word I say. I've got one tucked up in my big cheeks here right now. So it's like, it's going to be an interesting one. But you know what? One of the things I always say is the show must go on.
Yeah, I thought you were going to start singing and turn into Freddie Mercury for a second, but didn't happen. It's all good. The spirit is well taken, so the show must go on. We've been trying to get this podcast scheduled for a very long time, so I'm glad we're getting it done.
6 months of we have weekly meetings and we've still never been able to get this podcast recorded. So it doesn't matter who you are, folks. Sometimes it's just difficult to book it.
That's true.
So, Luke, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I'll let you tell the story of how we met and all that stuff too. So how we got connected.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, it's quite a long story, so I'll try to condense, but you and I have known each other for a long time now, many years, I would say is a good way to put it. And, we got started sort of in a podcasting group. We call it a union, but we had a group of people that were trying to start podcasts kind of around libertarian ideas. And you and I, hit it off and sort of connected through that. And, before you know it, we're having phone calls and we started doing shows together. And, I've been on podcasts of yours and you've been on podcasts of mine and, all of these things. And now, fast forward quite a while, we've got a long-standing business relationship at this point where you're doing, video editing, podcast editing, helping to do marketing, reaching out to get me on podcasts, things like that. And, that's been a very, very, very helpful thing because a lot of those talents and areas that you work in are things that I, maybe could do, but tend to put on the back burner, that sort of thing. And so they don't end up getting done, right? I'm a entrepreneur and it's what is the next most important, most valuable thing? Oftentimes I push certain things that are valuable away from the front of my mind to get, deep into some task or something. And I do that knowing how valuable podcasting has been for me. I mean, certain podcast appearances that I've made, going on other people's shows have been incredibly, incredibly valuable for our business, getting us out there and stuff. So I think it's been great, but the best is yet to come, as I always think. And we talk about this all the time, right? Onward and upwards.
Absolutely. And see, that's one of the things we got to do there. Absolutely. One of the things that we when you started doing podcasting specifically related to the business, um, obviously we started in a very different field when we were starting doing this, but when we got to actually a business centered podcast, what was your first instinct? Because this is actually the second podcast that we've done specifically built around the business.
Yeah, so I started something because I've done interview shows, in the past. And I used to have a show once upon a time, kind of a libertarian focused thing, where I would have different people on and we talk about some sort of, freedom oriented topic. And that was a lot of fun. I met a lot of really interesting and cool people through doing that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start this show. And it was called The Price of Time. The episodes are still out there on our YouTube channel. But, it was basically finding the transformative moments that other entrepreneurs have had, the great insight, the great conversation, the great book that they read, something that like totally shifted their mindset around stuff. And I came to find that perhaps doing an interview show was not the best fit for me at this time, for a number of reasons. Number one, the topics would be all over the place. Number two, it's difficult for me who, basically I put out my calendar, I put out scheduling links and things like that, and I let people book my time. But it became very difficult to coordinate all these different guests and different time zones, different countries, even. And getting that to be consistent, staying far enough ahead to where I always have a routine podcast episode ready to go, that sort of thing. Also, microphone quality, video quality, those sorts of things. It's like there's inconsistency. Sometimes you almost don't even want to run the show after you've recorded it, right? Because maybe the episode is great, but maybe it just sounds bad. It's going to grate on somebody's ears. And so there's all kinds of variables and things that were, let's just say frustrating, for lack of a better word. And uh, that ended up just not really panning out. It didn't get the kind of traction that we were hoping for and all that. So then you come to me. I mean, I guess you'd like to go into the show we're doing now. You came to me and said, "Hey, what if I host the show every time, and then Luke, you're a guest on the show, and then maybe other people on our team are a guest on the show, and we kind of talk about current events. So there's always something to talk about. It's always the same people. We always record at the same time every week, that kind of thing, to sort of alleviate some of the issues that we discovered with the previous podcast. And we're, gosh, like 20 something episodes into this new show, and it's working out great.
We're almost 30 episodes into this new show.
By the time this airs, probably 30 something, right? So yeah, it's yeah, and it's been great. There's always some nonsense out there. And yeah, it's kind of a dry topic sometimes. We're doing an business econ type show. We're talking about the global financial markets, the interest rate, things like that. But I think with the podcasting, if you have a specific niche that you're operating in, you're going to find your people. It's just a question of putting it out there. And the people who resonate with your message and who like the way that you approach these topics, they're going to become repeat listeners. So it's good. It's really good to do in my view.
One of the things that, like, one of your goals in general with your YouTube channel and like the podcasting has always been education. So while we're talking about current events and things like that, the show is still built around what your business does and educating people on, you know, the different way things could go if they really wanted it to.
Yeah, so on my team, and when I say team, I mean just our business, the other people in our organization. Let's say we talk a lot about the noise in the financial world. We didn't come up with that term, but it's the idea is that everybody has some kind of hot take on everything, and no matter what happens, even if it's happened 100 million times in the past, it's unprecedented and it's breaking news, and everything is just so ridiculous and overblown all the time. And it's very hard to know in an environment like that what actually is a big financial headline. Do I need to worry about this? Right? Because apparently I need to worry about 600 new things every single day. And like you can't live like that. It's not possible to like change your course of action from all of this new stuff all the time. You can't do that. So we try to hone in on what is actually important and impactful, or if it's being overblown and it really isn't impactful and a big deal, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about why. And there's really just certain fundamental things that we hone in on to try to bring it down, and say, okay, well, all this is going on, all these headlines are going around. Here's the actual, underlying message. Here's what we need to really do. Or in many cases, it's not anything new. It's just like let's just continue, hold steady. It's not that big of a deal. And we're trying to be grounding. You know what I mean? We're trying to help people navigate this world. Because you mentioned education, right? And so it's like, okay, if you learn just a handful of things, then you're very well equipped to navigate the finance world. And that's basically our message. And some people very much like that. Clients of mine, clients of the other people on the team, you know, they're tuning in and checking it out. And they appreciate not having this doomer gloomer kind of energy all the time about every little thing. So those are our people, right? And that's who we're trying to speak to.
Well, I find it amusing that you use the term noise because whether or not, I mean, that obviously is a term that I use constantly when we're talking about podcasting, the idea of separating the signal from the noise. And that for me, that actually just comes from the music world and being a guitar player. And you're always trying to get the best signal with the lowest noise floor to keep everything clean sounding and good. So my audience is very familiar. And to give the people a reference, we this particular week the noise that we were sifting through was the 3000th is this 2008 all over again.
Right, right. We've had so many 2008s, man. I'm telling you, it's like there's more 2008s than there are years since year zero. Right? It's it's
Now, granted, one of them is going to be the one that's actually worse than 2008, and but they can't all be 2008.
right. I mean, I've made this point on shows before. It's like I used to be very concerned, and like we talked about where are we going to put underground drums of water and various supplies. Like we used to be very prepper minded, and I mean we live in the middle of nowhere in the woods in Arkansas, right? So we're kind of still prepper minded in some sense, but we don't have years and years and years of supplies, and like that's not a thing that we're juggling on a day to day basis because at a certain point you have to realize like okay well every single time that anything happens isn't the end of the world. There's a book I haven't read it, but it's called "The World Is Always Ending" or "Coming to an End." I forget the exact title, right? And that's the idea. It's like if you are looking for that kind of thing, you're always going to find it, but you don't have to live like that. You probably shouldn't live like that. It wears you out. It's adrenaline fatigue and all these things. It's not helpful to you to be worried all the time.
So one thing I'd actually like to bring up is because from my perspective, some of the genesis of the show that I run with you is that I watched you struggle on an interview that you had with a person that we know in the podcast world, and I mean the show I think was still valuable to the company, but you there were some times in there where like I feel like the guest or the host didn't quite know what to make of what you do, and like he didn't want it to feel like just one big sales pitch, and so he's just kind of trying to talk general money. And one of the things I noticed is like, oh, Luke really doesn't care about most of this stuff outside of like his very specific niche. And so, is there in some way that I can kind of force him to have to pay a little bit more attention to the markets at large so that we can, if he gets invited on these podcasts, he's not without nothing to say. Like he's got some ideas of things that he's seeing over and over again. And so that from my perspective in marketing, that was one of the things like, well, seems like an easy enough way to kind of at least get him not behind the eight ball when people are asking him these questions. Because when you're doing the podcast appearances, what you want to do is you want to look like an expert. And so anything that we're doing that's taking away from you looking like an expert is probably not a good idea. So I'm actually curious to hear, almost 30 episodes in, how do you feel that we've done with that particular element?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's been very good. Now, I haven't been there for every single episode. That was another kind of issue that we were solving, with this is like, well, sometimes some random thing will happen, right? I had to leave town for gosh, almost 3 months for some family stuff that was going on, and it's like the momentum, it's very easy for things like that to break down. And so it's the idea of, well, what if anybody on the team could be on the podcast, right? Like, what if we have multiple possible guests all the time? So if I or Rob or any particular person can't do it, we still have a show, right? So that has been great, and then it gives me something to return to, and it's already right there, ready to go again. Because everybody else is still doing it. And so you know, I haven't recorded every single episode. It's just my point there, but it's been great, right? Because it gives us the chance. We have a group chat together where we talk about, okay, what might be a good episode? What's the thing to pay attention to this week? And we get to kind of do a deep dive for 20, 30 minutes. And, not only are we choosing the topic so that we're not getting way out of our depth into something that, would make us like look embarrassed, right? To just not have anything to say, but also we get to do some research, show up prepared, but it's not overdone. It's like we get to stick to first principles. We're not spending 3 weeks doing preparation. It's not a hour long episode. It's not anything crazy like that. It's what is the fundamentals here. Is it worth paying attention to? Why? Is it not worth paying attention to? Why? How does this go back to first principles? Show's over, right? And so it's commute sized, bite sized enough that I think we get each of us get a chance to kind of shine and show our perspective, which in our world, we're financial services guys. And so it's that's what you want, right? You want somebody that can concisely convey to you what to make of what's going on in the world, give you some good knowledge, some nuggets of wisdom, and then, wrap it up, right? Everybody doesn't want to get on a call with me for 3 hours to talk about, Austrian economics and stuff like that. Sometimes I do have some people that do, but it's a short enough time frame. I think you've expertly designed it, to be an excellent bite-sized approach.
And that's one of the things when we're making a podcast, and this goes for anyone, you want it to suit your goals. Like there's specific things that you want it to do for you, and one of the ones I said was keep things in the business world kind of top of mind for you, so you're not freedom. One of the reasons why I chose to host the show, and when I say host the show, that is very loose. Like I'm mostly there for color commentary and keep the time short, like so we don't run over. That is my job. Make the occasional joke and act like a moron who needs to be educated more, and to say, "All right, guys, time to end." But these are all things that were built into because we needed to have a way for the show to function. Not necessarily with you. We needed to have it be able to be weekly if you had business to go off and do. We knew we needed to do the signal to noise. Like we knew we needed to be more educated on some of these things. Like we need to build rapport and we needed to show your excellence in places that wasn't necessarily getting an opportunity to be shown off. So there's a whole bunch of those things. Now, that's kind of the specific stuff that we created this podcast for. But there's also like the big things that I promote to everybody. Why I say podcasting is probably the best things because podcasting is a content machine. Like when you do that episode, I put out a big thing. I load it up. I give you a and I give you a highlight video, and then we get to go out and start promoting and pushing it places, and we get to send an email to your customer base. So there's not any stream of content other than like say when you head out of town for a week, you don't get a chance to necessarily push everything that doesn't routinely get to see and keep you top of mind. You know, there is the added benefit you have had customers actually show up off of YouTube. They've seen something on there that's triggering them into it. But the big thing with podcasting is always top of mind. Build because one of the things I've been hammering on you since the beginning is, oh, we need to build out an email system so that people never forget. Like, oh, well, we'll get to it. Well, the easiest way to get to that was to say, okay, we have something happening every week that gives us the excuse to send an email out to our client base, our prospective client base, people that are interested, and so they don't get a chance to forget about us. Now, there's other elements that we're working on building out within that, but this was the quickest thing. Okay, we have something to talk about every week that we can send out an email blast. And they're never going to forget me because once a week's at least that. Do you feel as that's been valuable so far?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. To your point about, customers, right? I mean, we have had some people, existing clients who are routine viewers of the show, and that like getting our takes on things, and that's really awesome. But then also, we have people that, find us on YouTube. And, I don't know exactly what video they start with or whatever, but they'll get, the idea with a business, right? You want somebody in your ecosystem. And so if they see a podcast episode because they're interested in tariffs, right? We do a tariff episode. Great. Then they will get recommended another video. And if they watch that, hey, they've heard me talk for 45 minutes or an hour. If, familiarity breeds trust, that kind of thing, right? So spend some time watching me, spend some time hearing my takes on things, kind of resonates. Awesome. That is a potential call in the future. Now, if it doesn't resonate, that gets that person out of my YouTube channel, off of my email list, whatever. Like, I don't need to talk to that person. They don't want to talk to me anyway. Right. And so it's a very good way to sift through people. You get on the phone with me and you don't like talking to me, don't become my client. you
Mhm.
know, I'd like it for us to like each other. So,
Yeah, nobody wants to
I
go to business and work for people they don't like.
right, right. I mean, I say that in every interview when somebody's thinking about joining our team. It's like we might work together for 45 years. I would like us to like each other and make sure that we do and get that stuff out in the open really, really, really early, before there's a lot of pain associated with splitting up later. Like, just tell me what's up. Tell me how you feel about that. And so, that stuff has been really, really good. Um, but as far as the just the podcast, I mean, not only does it give new people on the team a chance to get out there and practice being in front of people and practice, speaking to the ether, the whole internet, potentially. But it's that content machine factor, right? That, hey, well, there's 30 episodes, they're 30 minutes a piece. That's 15 hours roughly of stuff. If they want to know how we feel about these topics, that's a lot of time. And this happens very frequently where people, the first time they interact with me, they heard me on a podcast, they listened to me narrate my own audiobook, they've watched me on YouTube, they've watched my, 11 or 12 part step by step video course. It's like they might have talked to me for 20 or 30 hours before I've ever heard their voice. So I'm like, you know me a lot better than I know you. I'll say that, on a call. And that's great. I'm glad that you've learned about me and that you've done your homework. But, what's your name? Right. Let's start at square one for my
The classic parasocial relationship.
sake. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So one other thing that I did want to bring up here is because obviously podcasts all have a YouTube element to them these days. Because you're stupid for not setting that up. This has also given us a lot of push. Where I've been telling you one of the big things you need to work on is to bring more of your own personality to the business because you're often trying so hard to be a business guy and be accepted as a business guy. A lot of times, the fact that you're a kooky gamer doesn't always get a chance to be in it. So having this business element kind of handled, it now opens up the reins for you to make videos that kind of go outside of the norm. And like the more creative elements, so like you had recently put out a video about is Valve a monopoly? We had one where you taught an economics lesson centered around what was the game there? The animal
Oh,
collecting
Animal
game,
Crossing. Animal
Animal
Crossing. Yeah.
Crossing.
Yeah.
And do you think that this has given you more runway to do that, having worked on the podcast?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, you always hear, in the business world, niche down, and be in this teeny tiny little thing. It's okay if you're, the expert at serving like this one particular type of client in this one particular geographical region, only males, only between these age ranges, whatever. And like, uh, I think having some broader content has been really fun. Like, I mean, I have a separate YouTube channel where I do stuff about music, and a lot of times it's video game music, and so that's a part of me. Now, everybody that follows our business channel doesn't need to follow that channel. You know what I mean? But if there's overlap, then those people are like, those are the top 20%, Pareto principle. Like, those are my people. And we could get on the phone and talk all day, every day about it. But if I'm not putting that out there, then they're never going to get to connect with that part of me. And we're in a relationship business. It's not like, it's like JC Penney or something. Like I don't have a relationship with JC Penney. You know what I mean? It's like they have their thing, they have a sale or whatever, and like you get it if you want it. But our work at Perfect Spiral Capital, it's relationship driven. You have an issue, you call me. I'm gonna pick a phone, not some random person. Me, you got my cell phone number if we're working together, and so yeah, that deeper relationship. When somebody who is a client of mine realizes and resonates with some of these other pieces, then it's like, awesome. You know what, man? Text me, call me anytime. Let's talk about it. And those relationships are a lot of fun. I've made a lot of really, really good friends through the business world. But instead of tiptoeing around it, just put it out there, right? Be who you're going to be. I think to your point, and attract the people that are going to resonate with that.
I'll tell anyone, like, one of the superpowers that we all have right now is that we don't have to be a major company. Like, you get to be a person, and you get to go out there and interact personally. And people are just looking for that because they've been so beaten up by corporate America. So, amen to that. I guess the last thing that I'll ask you before we head out is, what do you tell people that are looking to start a podcast for their business if you're to give any advice?
Yeah, I mean, eh, this is one of those things where sometimes I don't necessarily feel like the guy to ask. I don't know any more than the average person, other than the fact that I've done podcasting. Like I I have a decent mic. I have a decent camera, right? Like I've invested a little bit into this because I see the value in it, and so yeah, I've always tried to embrace the philosophy of ready, fire, aim. Just do it. Just put out an episode. If you're thinking about it, you think it might be useful, you think you have something valuable that people might want to listen to, give it a freaking shot. You don't need to roll it out as on every platform, and you don't have to overdo it. Just do it and see. And you may say, we only got 5 views on the first episode. Well, great. But if you get 10 on the second episode, the first one you do is going to be the hardest. I've, I'm 36, right? And so I've seen this like generation right behind me. It's a little younger that, the idea of picking up a phone like is terrifying. And so I'm in the type to just go, cool, I'll just call them and just get my issue solved instead of, worrying about how to send an email or, something like that.
It must be nice to not have social anxiety, Luke.
Well, I was the most like very, very, very nervous, scared little kid, like I really was when I was much younger. But I just made a conscious decision to try to get out there. And like now I'm comfortable. I've exposure therapied myself to a point where I'm good, And so, but I see people struggle with this. And podcasting is a great low risk way to practice speaking to people, and to get things out there. Um, so do that, like my first podcast episode that I ever did was probably not very good if I went back and listened to it, you know, but I did one. And then you have the ability to go scrutinize that and say, I probably should get a better mic. I probably should say less. Those sorts of things. You can scrutinize and improve incrementally as you go. The first one you do is probably the worst one, but you got it over with. You're done with that. So episode 2 is going to be better, most likely. And then 20, 30, 40 episodes in, you're like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can pick up I can turn on Zoom, I can turn on whatever. We're using Descript. I can show up on time and make a conversation. I kind of have some talking points I'm comfortable with, being as a guest or as a host, right? Different things for different purposes, but you probably end up doing both. If you host a successful show, somebody's probably going to ask you to be a guest, right? What do they want to talk about? How long is the show going to be? Just so to just not ramble all day and to condense it down, I would say just get started and don't give up after 2 episodes. Keep doing it and figure out what lessons you can pick up from the experience that you're having. It's useful in many, many ways other than just making your podcast better. It'll make you better on the phone. It'll make you better in your client meetings. All of the other things will also benefit from routinely sitting in front of a camera and putting yourself out there.
Well, you heard it here, folks. And if I might add and piggyback on, if you are terrified and you just can't seem to pull that trigger, call me, talk to me, and we'll figure out what works for you and how to get you down the path of enjoying the benefits of podcasting. So, thank you so much for coming on, Luke. Where can people find out more about you if they're interested in what you actually do?
Sure. Here on YouTube or elsewhere, you can just find us as Perfect Spiral Capital. You can, you know, find me anywhere else as Luke Tatum. You can find me on X, etc. But we've got all kinds of stuff. You'd like to look up my book, which is oftentimes how people find me these days. You can find that over on Amazon. It's called Between the Lies: How to Reclaim Your Future from the Banks and Wall Street. And a good credit to you, Nick, for coming up with that subtitle, because I couldn't for the life of me think to put what to put after the colon. So yeah, I appreciate everything that you've always done, to support my business, and I really really enjoyed this chat today. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, boss. You have yourself a good one.